So I'm going to give a quick demonstration here of the connection between respiratory mechanics, that is how we breathe, and shoulder mobility and range of motion. So I have a client here who is demonstrating on assessment a lack of internal rotation, or relative lack of internal rotation. So I'm getting from vertical to about here. They're also demonstrating on assessment quite excessive external rotation. So I'm able to get the wrist below the table, so I'm going quite a way past horizontal right here. If I also look at horizontal abduction, so the ability to reach behind, if we come to the edge of the table right here, I'm getting just below horizontal really, and that's about as much as we get right here. Now there is a school of thought that would say stretch what's tight, so that must mean if we can't reach behind, tight pack minor, so stick a ball in it, or poke it with a stick, or zap it with a vibrating gun, or just pull on it and try and make that tissue longer and try and release something to try and get some range of motion that we think that we should have. That same school of thought would say if we're seeing a lack of internal rotation, we need to stretch into internal rotation, so exercises like sleeper stretch and similar. I'm going to say we should be doing better than that, and we should be looking bigger picture at all times. And when we're looking at shoulders, we need to be thinking shoulder blades, we need to be thinking rib cages, we need to be thinking breathing patterns and breathing mechanics, because that is the primary influence of alignment at the shoulder blade and rib cage, which is going to influence where the socket is. And if we are influencing where the socket is, we're going to influence what the ball does within that socket. Now, I'm going to demonstrate that by just placing the feet flat here, which just helps put the pelvis into a more neutral position to get the pelvic floor in a more favorable position, which allows us to get the diaphragm and pelvic floor opposing each other, which is the goal. So if I ask you just to rest your hands, just rest them lightly, don't suppress. Just on the bottom ribs here, that just gives me a little guidance of what's happening at the ribs. And then all you're going to do is take a few breaths of air. So you take a deep breath in through the nose, big full breath in, all the way out, and the breath out, we're pursing the lips, so there's a little bit of resistance, all the way out, everything, squeeze every last drop out. Now, without letting these hands move, take another deep breath in through the nose. Full breath in, all the way in, full breath out, every last bit of air out. So on this exhale, I'm looking to see these hands come down and slightly together as the rib cage drops and descends. Now I don't want to see them move on the breath in, so big breath in, all the way in, all the way in, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Big breath out, all of it out, squeeze it out, squeeze it, 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 squeeze it. All of it, every last bit of air out, get it all out, through the mouth, out. Pause. Breath in through the nose. Fill up, fill up, fill up, fill up, fill up. Breath out. And then one more breath. All of it out, every last bit. Hands come down and together. In. Big breath out. Squeeze it all out, get it out, all of it, all of it. Use the abs. Hands come down and together. Lovely. And then just relax, let the breathing return to normal. So just going to pop you back into that position we assessed in. And then let's see what happens at the shoulder joint. So when we come into internal rotation, we now have significantly more than we had before. When we look at external rotation, we've got significantly less. So we've taken some range of motion from here and added it to here. Another way of describing that is we've actually just moved that total range. Have a look at horizontal abduction. So let's move you to the side right here. We're now down pretty much to 180 degrees, so significantly more of both of those things that were apparently lacking. Now, we haven't stretched anything. What we've done is moved things around. We've addressed alignment, but we've addressed alignment through breath. So if we were trying to poke or prod or jab muscle tissue up here in the hope that it might permit extra range of motion back here, all we do really is just hurt ourselves and bruise a muscle that wasn't doing anything wrong in the first place. if we were trying to force internal rotation with a sleeper stretch or similar, we have the same total range of motion in that shoulder that we had before. It's just whereas we had excessive coming back and not as much as we might want coming forward, we've moved that whole range around. So if we were trying to force, there was already the requisite amount of motion that was just in a slightly different place. If we were trying to force even more of that, all we'd be doing is just driving that ball out of the socket and creating damage and pain at that shoulder. So when we are thinking movement at any joint, we need to be thinking alignment, but when we are thinking movement and stability at the shoulder joint or the shoulder joints, we need to be thinking primarily about ribcage position, which is primarily influenced by breath. So shoulders equals breath.